In the bustling city of New York, Wojak was just another worker lost in the crowd. He was 35 years old, stuck in a repetitive, thankless job, spending his days under fluorescent lights and his nights too tired to think of anything beyond surviving another day. He was a data entry clerk, typing numbers into a screen, watching his dreams fade with each keystroke. The dreamer he had once been had been buried under years of wage slavery, and with each day he felt more trapped, more invisible. One evening, after yet another exhausting day, Wojak sat on a bench near his tiny apartment, his mind racing with frustration and longing. He remembered the life he'd once imagined, a life where he ran his own business, pursued his own dreams, and felt free. But now, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was chained to this job, barely scraping by, his future slipping away with every passing day. His heart ached as he looked up at the tall buildings around him, symbols of power and freedom he had always longed for but never felt he could reach. The next day, during a rare lunch break, Wojak's co-worker Ben handed him a book. "Read this," Ben said, a knowing look in his eye. "It's about breaking free from the system." Wojak was skeptical but took the book home, flipping through it late into the night. The stories of people who had left their unfulfilling jobs to pursue their dreams filled him with a fire he hadn't felt in years. He realized that the only thing keeping him bound to his job was his own fear of the unknown. Determined to make a change, Wojak began saving every dollar he could, living off the bare minimum, and spending his nights studying online courses on business and finance. Slowly, he built a small side hustle, reselling vintage clothing online, using his weekends to scout thrift stores and post listings. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Wojak poured his heart into this new venture, feeling a sense of control he hadn't known in years. But the struggle wasn't over. Wojak's boss, Mr. Carter, noticed his newfound energy and began piling more work on him, assuming he'd stay late and go above and beyond. Wojak tried to balance it all, but the stress became overwhelming. His side business started to suffer, and his frustration boiled over. One evening, after a particularly harsh reprimand from Carter, Wojak found himself standing in front of his boss's office, heart pounding, hands shaking. He had two choices, to endure or to fight for his freedom. Taking a deep breath, Wojak knocked and walked into Mr. Carter's office. "I'm done," he said, voice steady but eyes fierce. "I'm tired of giving my life to a job that gives me nothing in return." Mr. Carter scoffed, dismissing him with a wave, but Wojak didn't waver. He handed in his resignation letter, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. The first few weeks were tough. Wojak doubted himself, worried about his finances, and struggled to make ends meet. But with each sale, his confidence grew. Slowly, he expanded his business, moving beyond vintage clothes to unique accessories and handmade items. He poured his soul into it, working longer hours than he ever had at his office job, but feeling alive for the first time. Months later, Wojak stood in a small storefront he'd just rented. The shelves were filled with items he'd carefully curated, and customers began to wander in, drawn by the unique style and Wojak's passion for his work. He was no longer just an anonymous worker. He was the owner of something he had built with his own hands. One evening, as Wojak closed up the shop, he walked outside and looked up at the same skyscrapers he used to gaze at. But this time, he didn't feel trapped or defeated. He felt free. He had escaped the wage slavery that had once held him captive, and he had found a life of purpose and independence. Wojak's journey wasn't over, but he knew he had broken the chains that once held him, and for the